Hello, and welcome to another episode of the American Man podcast. I'm Isaiah Ritchie. This is my first podcast back in months, actually. It started off because I got water damage in my studio. A bunch of stuff came through the ceiling after drywalling and painting and fixing things up a bit. I'm finally able to do these again. But, life happened and, it took me a while. And it wasn't until the recent events that I decided to start this back up again. So, um, the recent event that I'm talking about is the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And, um, I try not to be, particularly political. I think that you can be an American man and have liberal points of view and conservative points of view. But this really struck me because, first of all, as a father of young children, I just couldn't believe the hatred and anger poured out towards him even after he was killed. And, you know, regardless of your political association or affiliation, beliefs, things like that, um, it should be it should be plain that that this is not something to kill someone over. But that's where we're at, right? As a society, that's where we're at. We're at a point where we believe, and people say that words are violence, and that justifies physical violence to stop the words that we don't like. And, at this point, from what we know from the alleged assassin, it had to do with transgender ideology and things like that. I think that ideology, and I'm going to try to do some podcasts on that as well at some point. But that ideology lends itself to sort of a physical violent reaction to words due to the nature of its um, the way it's embedded in a person's um, being, so to speak. In other words, if someone believes that they are another gender and someone says they're not, then that, they look at it as you do not believe I exist. In fact, that's what they say. They say, you're trying to cancel me. They say, you don't believe I exist, things like that. And so, that's the first, or that's the how easy it was to fall into, this affects me. Your words affect me in such a physical way. But I don't think that it is contained. I mean, obviously, political violence is not contained to transgender ideology. We've had political violence for years and years and years. I wasn't around for Martin Luther King or JFK or any of those, but we have political violence throughout our history. Um, but it was striking this time because Charlie Kirk was a debater. He wanted to change people's minds by convincing them, not by pressuring them, not by creating laws, things like that. And yeah, he had his mannerisms, and he would certainly sometimes he would answer a question by asking another question, and that was one of his primary methods. And I understand that some people were frustrated with that, and they didn't believe that he was approaching it with good faith. But I think at his core, he was. Um, I believe that he was, and he was doing what so many people refuse to do, which is engage people in the other side, right? And exposing yourself to being wrong in public, exposing yourself to not having an answer in public. We are very hesitant nowadays to engage in any conversation in which case, or in which there's any sort of chance that we might be made to look foolish. And um, we watched his memorial this last weekend, and what came to mind was um, the poem that I believe Theodore Roosevelt was part of a speech that he gave, now known as The Man in the Arena. And part of that says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds." And it goes on and on. I won't read the whole thing. But the arena that we have today has changed. We are no longer on a physical battlefield. That's not our arena. Um, Wars are now fought through a digital realm and through economics, much more so than physical armies and things like that. And I believe that the battlefield, that the arena that we have today that is most important, is the arena of public discourse and being able to talk about things, to be able to hash out ideas, to expose your own ideas to the public testing, um, and trying to convince others through reasoning, through persuasion, that your side is the correct one, and at the same time being willing to accept that your ideas might be wrong, and being willing to accept that if you are proven wrong, that you're willing to adjust your point of view. That's another huge issue we have right now. And I think something that you know being a man doesn't mean being right every time. Being a man means accepting the truth for what it is and adapting your life to fit that truth. So that is something that people might see as a weakness. I've heard before, oh, that politician's a flip flopper, or they can't make up their mind, or we dig up things from people's past all the time, what they said, what they wrote, what they maybe actions, things like that. But you have to be willing to change. And if we, first of all, if we cancel someone for doing something 20 years ago, we're not going to have anyone left, because we all have skeletons in our closet, so to speak. We've all done things that we would not want aired in the public, nor should we have everything aired in the public, because they inevitably lack context. That inside joke that you told that was distasteful, or the time that you fill in the blank, whatever it is. Now, surely, many people have done things that are truly wrong, and hopefully they have, come out of those to be able to look back and say, that was foolish, that was wrong, I should not have done that. But we need to be able to accept that. And one of the essential qualities of being a man in society is accepting that you may have been wrong and being willing to change and adapt. And that's where we're at, a society where we can't do that, because we have separated ourselves into tribes. I heard a recent interview where one of the people described it as two cults, essentially, because of the difficulty it is to disagree or leave, and that they hold it against you. And I think that's very striking. I think that's very accurate in our political stance, in our political parties. And so what I saw when Charlie was killed was someone who is no longer willing to engage in debate. I saw an ideology that is no longer willing to put forth facts, and is only willing now to resort to physical violence to silence those that disagree with them. And I, for the first time, was truly worried that my family or my children may grow up in a world where, simply speaking what we believe to be the truth could result in physical violence. I have never in my life wanted to harm a person, physically harm a person, simply because of something they said. They can call me names, that's fine. They can insult me. They can, we have laws in the books for slander, for libel, um, things like that. But we've resorted to a more sinister side of uh, silencing those we disagree with. So, my plan is to start this back up, to start podcasts back up. Um, I can't be silent. I can't just sit and listen um, while the world goes in a direction that I don't want my children to have to bear. So I'm going to try to start more topics that I think help men become better. That is my goal, and maybe it's going to be political. That's fine. We live in a political world. Um, it used to be as the federal government was smaller, things that happened in Washington didn't seem to affect us as much. That's not the case anymore. We have a bigger and bigger federal government. Um, it doesn't matter who's in control. They typically expand the size and the reach of the federal government. So politics matter. They really do. I think your faith matters. That matters even more. But your politics are going to be built off of what you believe to be true and good and right. And so, as an extension of your faith, of your belief, of your core values, I think we have a civic duty to engage in political discourse. I think we have a civic duty to engage in honest debate and honest self-reflection of our beliefs. So this was it was a terrible week. To see a young father ripped away from this world simply for engaging in debate was not just scary. It was sad. It was tragic. And to see not just an overwhelming outpour of support, but to see instead mixed views and people on Twitter and all those corners of the internet say that they were glad he was gone or he deserved it or all these different terrible things. That was, I won't say shocking because we've come to grow used to that type of thing. But it was disheartening. And I believe that we need to do better. I believe that we need to make ourselves better. I believe we have to put in the work to make ourselves better and to make this world better. And that starts with each one of us. So I'm going to try to do my part. I encourage you to do yours.